Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this evening's program, An Evening with the Kwansaba, presented by Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. I'm Sarah Kunz-Jones, Adult Programming Coordinator for St. Louis County Library. Before we get started, I wanted to bring to your attention a few helpful tips in case this is your first Zoom program. First of all, this is a webinar, which means you should be able to see and hear us, but we cannot see or hear you. We are recording, so this will be available on our YouTube page within a few days. You'll receive an email with a link and also a ton of resources when that video does post. We also have subtitles, you may notice, if yours are turned on. You can adjust those by going to the live transcript button in the Zoom window. You can hide the transcripts, you can show them, or rather subtitles as they're called, in that menu. And you can also increase or decrease the size of the font by going to the subtitle settings. If you experience any difficulties with your connection during this evening's program, for example, the video suddenly drops out or freezes for a very long time, sometimes you just got to give it a minute. But if it seems to be really stuck or suddenly you can't hear us, those sorts of things, we do recommend that you exit the program, that you try to get closer to your Wi-Fi router and then rejoin us. And generally that helps. Uh, we will have the chat turned on during the program, so feel free to submit questions or comments as they occur to you, but we will address those at the end of the presentation. So just wanted to let you know, we don't want you to forget anything between now and the end of the evening, so feel free to drop those in. All right, so I do want to remind you just a couple quick things about library programs. First, you don't have to have a library card or even live in St. Louis County in order to attend our programs. We hope you enjoy yourself this evening. Feel free to share the recording when that comes out and tell family, friends about other programs that you think they might be interested in, even if they don't live here nearby us. You can check out a full list of our upcoming programs at www.slcl.org/events. But in particular, there are a couple programs that you might be interested. I want to mention on Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m., Delia Rainey will be back with us. She did a memoir program with us back in January, and she's coming back to do a writing creative family history program on that evening. That's another virtual program. And then we are also in the middle of National Poetry Month, as you may or may not know. Hopefully you know, joining us this evening. But we are also creating a collection of poetry for people ages 7 and up. And you're invited to submit original poems for inclusion in the St. Louis County Library Poetry Compilation. The compilation will appear in an online collection of works available to all participating Missouri libraries. And it's available year-round once it's posted in the SLCL's e-media collection. And I'll have a link for more information on that in the chat once we get started. Also, don't forget you can catch up on any programs you missed by checking out the library's YouTube channel. For example, we had Ben Ga with us. Was it just last week? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And he shared with us writing haiku. And we have many of our programs are available on that YouTube channel. So I'm going to have a link to that as well as a virtual sign-in sheet. If you would take a moment before we finish up tonight to tell us what you think of this evening's program, and that would be really helpful to us. All right, so now I'd like to turn things over to this evening's presenter, Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. She is an artist and educator who has co-founded a funding collective for Black artists called The Black Skillet and a podcast that centers voices of color called Who Raised You? And she is also the founder of Get the Acceptance Letter Academy, where she helps college-bound families. I'll have more links to all of those in various endeavors. She's a very busy lady, but I thank her so much for making time for us this evening to talk about the Kwansaba. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Treasure.
Greetings, greetings, one and all. It is I, your intrepid poet, educator, and performer, Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond, PhD. I'm really excited to share with you about the Kwansaba. So I created a slide presentation. This is going to be interactive. I hope that you're saying hello in the chat too. and we'll be able to have a great question and answer toward the end of the presentation. But hi, Diane. I'm going to share some slides and get right into it. Let me share my screen. We realized earlier, Sarah realized that there's something that you should not click, or else it would tear this whole thing up, and we don't want to tear this whole thing up. So let's talk about the Kwansaba. Now, the Kwansaba is a poetic form, and there are lots of poetic forms. And during this presentation, we're going to learn what a poetic form is. We're going to identify what makes a poem a Kwansaba. We're going to look, listen, and read some examples. And then guess what? You're going to write a Kwansaba. I know you didn't know you were going to do that, but you are going to write a Kwansaba during this presentation. So get your pen and paper, or pull out your phone if you're one of those people who takes notes on their phone, because you're going to write a Kwansaba today. Now, first, let's talk about what is a poetic form. So the physical structure of a poem, the length of lines, their rhythms, their systems of rhymes and repetition, the pattern of the poem makes it a certain form, a poetic form. And there are lots of forms that you are familiar with. I'm sure you guys have heard of haiku. Sarah just mentioned that they had Ben Moller-Ga, who came and taught and read haiku, 3-line poem, created in Japan. And then, of course, there is the sonnet, a popular classical form, 14-line poem created in Europe, Italy specifically. There is the limerick. A lot of us associate limericks with the Irish. There once was a man from St. Louis who da 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 da. He da 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 da. Right? We know that rhythm. It has a certain rhyme scheme. It has a certain number of syllables, a limerick. And there are ghazals. You may be less familiar with that form. That's a Persian form, an Arabic form that Persians took and really perfected. And it's called the ghazal. So let's look at a ghazal. One of my favorite poets, Patricia Smith, wrote this incredible ghazal called Hip Hop Guzzle. Gotta love us brown girls munching on fat, swinging blue hips, decked out in shells and splashes. Lordy, bringing them woo hips. As the jukebox teases, watch my sisters throat the heartbreak, inhaling bass line, cracking backbone and singing through hips. Like something boneless, we glide silent, seeping between floorboards, wrapping around the hems and ooh, we clinging like glue hips. Engines grinding, rotating, smoking, gotta pull back some. Natural minds are lost at the mere sight of ringing true hips. Gotta love us girls, just strutting down Manhattan streets, killing the men folk with a dose of that stinging view hips. Crying about getting old. Patricia, you need to get up off of what God gave you, say a prayer and start clinging, slinging. Cue hips. So the ghazal is a really wonderful form. It also has 14 syllables per line. Each of the couplets, if you hear that, the root word inside of couplet, couple, that means that it's two lines, and each one ends a sentence. Each one could be a complete sentence by itself. So those are just some of the requirements for the form guzzle. Now, the Kwansaba that we've all gathered here to talk about today is a poetic form created by Eugene Benjamin Redmond in 1995. Now, if you're wondering, he has the same last name as Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. Well, you know how they say she get it from her mama? I get it from my daddy. Eugene Redmond is my father. He is a gifted Black arts movement poet, professor, cultural worker, activist, visual archivist, and an avid collector of all things Black and beautiful. The Kwansaba was inspired by the 7-day holiday of Kwanzaa. You all may be familiar with Kwanzaa. It is an African American holiday meant to reclaim some of the Afrocentric celebrations that were lost to us via the transatlantic slave trade. So it's an opportunity to celebrate 7 principles and commune with family in a way that is more handmade and familistic. So the Kwansaba is a combination of the word Kwanzaa and the Swahili word for the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba. So it is a praise poem form. And as a quick note, even though my father gets most of the credit for creating the Kwansaba, it was birthed in the kind of workshop atmosphere of his writers club, the Eugene B. Redmond Writers Club, founded, birthed in East St. Louis, Illinois, and it is going into its 35th year, I believe. The Eugene B. Redmond Writers Club gives aid and discomfort to writers for going on 35 years now. And I just wanted to share a brief bit of video with you where the longtime president of the club, Darlene Roy, touches on what that club has meant. And, you know, it's meant a lot. The Kwansaba has been written and written about in every major creative writing outlet. It's been written all over this globe. And it is a praise poem, as I said, and it must be 7 lines long with 7 words per line, and no word exceeds 7 letters unless it is a proper noun. So for instance, a word like Mississippi is obviously longer than 7 letters, but it's a proper noun, so that one gets a pass. So you just have to remember 7 words, 7 lines, no longer than 7 letters per word. In general, it's a praise poem, celebration of family and African American culture. And there is my handsome dad. I'm going to treat you to a bit of video. This is the longtime president of the Eugene B. Redmond Writers Club, Darlene Roy.
Well, the Writers Club started in 1986, and I have been a member since its inception. And I've also served as president since we started the Writers Club. I'm a co-founder, along with Eugene Redmond, for whom the club is named for, and Sherman Fowler. Oh my goodness, we've done so many different projects to help the community over the years. In the 90s, we had a fundraiser because of the flooding in East St. Louis, and so we got a lot of poets together and raised money to help the flood victims. In 1995, The Writers Club developed a poetic genre called the Kwansaba. Kwan, the first four letters, Kwan meaning first, coming from Kwanzaa, and the last four letters, Saba, coming from Nguzo Saba, which is 7 principles. So we're taking the principle part. So we squished them together and we had a new concept, first principle. And that is a poetic form that has 7 lines of poetry. There are 7 words on each line. No word exceeds 7 letters unless it's a foreign term or a proper noun. So we've been writing this particular genre over the many years since 1995, and now it's being written all over the world. I've had an opportunity to meet all 3 of the poet laureates.
So there you have it, the great Darlene Roy, longtime president of the Eugene B. Redmond Writers Club. And let's look at an example of a Kwansaba written by its creator, Eugene B. Redmond, poet laureate of East St. Louis since 1976, the country's longest sitting poet laureate of a city. So this one is called Memoir for the Fallen and the Risen. And if you look at the bottom of it, you can see that it was written in 2014. Those of you who live in the St. Louis metropolitan remember that unfortunately, Michael Brown was murdered by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. And the uprising that resulted, the national and global attention that resulted is represented in this poem. Memoir for the Fallen and the Risen. It's fall on planet Ferguson, where poetries shed leaves and tears onto storied and varied colors of peacescapes, like Juneteenth, Jubilee, and terror shade our memoirs with Emmets, Oscars, Trayvons, and Michaels, till we forge a seesaw of fallen risen marching toward Gil Scott Heron's Winter in America. Powerful. So much to see there, but notice 7 lines, 7 words per line, Emmett's, Oscars, Trayvons, and Michael's till we. And none of them are longer than 7 letters unless they are a proper noun or a quote unquote foreign term. Now, in 2015, my book was published and it's called Chop, a collection of Kwansabas for Fannie Lou Hamer. And, you know, it's so interesting because I became so enamored with Mrs. Hamer. I believe it might have been 2004, I went back to my alma mater of Jackson State University for a National Endowment for the Humanities program that they had for teachers. At the time, I was a high school English teacher, and there was a program they offered to try to help high school teachers infuse more of their curriculum with information about the civil rights and to create lessons about the civil rights era. So I went back to my alma mater in Jackson, Mississippi, and we met freedom riders, and we saw where Medgar Evers was murdered in his driveway. And we talked a lot about the Congress for Racial Equality, the Congress of Federated Organizations, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and we talked about the story and life of Fannie Lou Hamer. And I was so struck by how incredible an activist and orator and vocalist and organizer that she was, that it became CHOP, a collection of Kwansabas for Fannie Lou Hamer. So, Fannie Lou Hamer, who was she? Well, as you can see, she was a good looking woman. She was a good looking woman. Fannie Lou Hamer was a resident of Mississippi, a native of Sunflower County. She was born in 1917, the youngest of 20 children. And she lived a life where she saw and witnessed firsthand the brutality and degradation of the Jim Crow South. I don't even know if we can call it post-slavery, some of the stories that she shared, but after a while, she lived to meet young people from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who came to Mississippi to help Black people agitate and organize to get the vote. Many of you may know, and this may be new information to some of you, that there was a time in the US, and in particular in the Deep South, where Black people were not allowed to vote. And what those young people discovered when they came down to Mississippi was, an organic genius, was somebody who only needed to be ignited, had everything that they needed to mobilize basically an army of the disenfranchised, and to be the reason why we have the Voting Rights Act. So I'm going to read just a few Kwansabas about Fannie Lou Hamer. She was proof of what we all suspect. We all suspect that in communities, buried by the rubble of racism and sexism and white supremacy and homophobia and ableism, we all suspect that when we ride past those communities or through those communities, that there are some undiscovered gems there, that there are some young people, some middle-aged people, some old people that if they were just given access, would be a gift to us all. So this first Kwansaba is one I believe her mother would have written on her heart after she had her 20th child. And it's called October 16th, 1917, Montgomery County, Mississippi. Boss say I birthed 20 field hands. Then give me $50 for Fannie. Done promised this last one to God. Dream I give her to the priest. Took her behind the Holy of Holies. Came out full grown and singing glory. Shook me woke. Knowed I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. You know the angels in heaven done sign my name. Now, I sing in between the poems because that's what Fannie Lou Hamer would do. Fannie Lou Hamer was the best kind of spiritual singer, church vocalist. And she was a short, dark woman of the people. So this next one is called Chop. As you know, the book is called Chop. And here it is. Yam on stove, water jug ready. Spigot bath, rag tide. Groggy hands can't be no stumbling block, nor suckling babe to tend. Son be waiting his turn, watching me beat him to field. Cotton is calling. If 500 pounds mean a bell, how Negroes be called? No count. So Fannie Lou Hamer grew up, as I said, during the Jim Crow era, and she was a sharecropper. Her family had been sharecroppers, and she rose to the ranks of timekeeper, and she married a man who she loved that they call Paps, and he was the bus driver for the plantation. So he would pick people up and transport them to and from the fields, and she was the person who would keep up with people's weights of their cotton and weigh their cotton. And even when she weighed the cotton, she was known for helping people to get fair weights and fair wages. Because one of the things that the plantation owners would do is they would rig the weights so that the amount of cotton you picked, it wouldn't weigh as much when it was set on the scale. So this next one is called Ears and Fingers. Ain't baby's ears and fingers sweet? Barefoot winters harden they feet. Ashy elbows and scab knees grow callous. Not them ears and fingers, pretty fat thumbs, lobes with baby hair still on them. Mobs even crave them. Pickled tokens floating cute as can be in big store windows. So ears and fingers brings us right into confrontation with a lynching. Fannie Lou Hamer was witness to a lot of anti-Black violence. She even went to have some health care and wound up having a hysterectomy that she neither needed nor consented to. In Mississippi, they call them Mississippi appendectomies. But when she was a small child, there was a notorious lynching. There was a Black man who got into a conflict with white men, and eventually he was killed, and some of his extremities, some of his ears and fingers were put in a big jar and set in a store window so that as Black people passed through town doing their business, they would see those tokens from the lynching. Now, you and I know that that was designed to keep Black people from resisting, right? To let them know that if you do resist, this is what could happen to you. But over time, terror like that creates the opposite effect, does it not? Because then you know you have nothing to lose. And that's where Fannie Lou Hamer was by the time that the young people from SNCC came to Mississippi to ask people if they would be brave enough to register to vote. So this one is called Reddish. Reddish is kind of a Mississippi dialect way to say register. Bus bound for Indianola, full with colored bodies. Cotton chopped heads full with freedom lessons. Be polite, eye contact, talk up. We ain't wrong, we just know better. Extra shoes and my own freedom pen. We gonna reddish today. Gonna reddish today. Gonna reddish today. We gonna reddish today. So I'm looking at the clock, making sure that I'm being respectful of your time. Fannie Lou Hamer was among fewer than 15 people who said, yes, young activists, we will go and try to register to vote. And they all piled onto a bus. And on the way there, the sheriff stopped them and gave them a ticket because the bus was too yellow. So everybody gathered their money together to pay their ticket so that they could continue to the one place in the county where you could register to vote. And once they got there, it was drizzling, raining. They were made to stand outside and only enter in twos. And men with long guns, with shotguns, were kind of pacing menacingly outside as they were waiting their turn to go in. Once they got into the courthouse, they were given a copy of the Mississippi Constitution and asked to respond to an article, write a cogent essay explaining what that article meant. And then, of course, there was the literacy test that had questions like, how many bubbles in a bar of soap? Oh, and you had to pay. There was a poll tax. So there were a lot of barriers in place to keep people from registering, to keep Black people from registering to vote. In the chat now, I want you to tell me, yes, if you think Fannie Lou Hamer was able to vote on that day, and no, if you think she was not able to vote on that day. Give me a yes in the chat if you think she was able to vote. Give me a no in the chat if you think, no, she was not registered to vote that day. All right, great. I see the numbers going up. Let me see. Rocio Romero says yes. Andrea says no. Cherie Remington says no. Paisha says yes, she could do it. Diane said no. I'm waiting on one more answer, and I'm going to tell y'all the correct answer. Miss Brenda said no, and Miss Brenda is right. Thank you, Miss Brenda. No, no, it didn't happen it didn't work out for them, y'all. It didn't work out. It did not work out for them on that day. And they rode home on that yellow bus, demoralized, shooketh. If you've ever played sports and you went and lost a game and you really got skull drug across the field or across the court, that sad, quiet ride home after you've been embarrassed out there, that's how they felt. And, Fannie Lou Hamer looked around and she said, well, the best day of my life is the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. And the people who rode with her, they knew that song and they started singing too. Hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. And the young people from SNCC looked and they said, who do we have on this bus? We thought we were coming down here to save people. We thought we were coming down here to a bunch of illiterate people who had remained in their condition because they hadn't been trying, not because of the amount of brutality and built-in, baked-in systemic racism. We just really thought they just needed us. If we just showed up, if we showed up, we could fix it. And what they discovered was they needed Fannie Lou Hamer. So this next one is called Boss Say She Can Come Back. Marlo say she can come back. Just take her name off that voter roll. Back to field, back to cabin. Backsliding is a sin, I say. Back to slop jaw. Back to thinking rights was flies. Been shooing them when I should have been inviting them home for freedom supper. Fannie Lou Hamer was fired as soon as she got back. You know, it's interesting. We're talking about a time with so little technology, but they used those landline phones to great effect. And before she was even back at that plantation, the owner knew what she had been a part of and demanded that she go and remove her name from the voter roll or else be fired. And she chose to be fired. And then she had an experience that became one of the, pun intended, linchpins of her story that she used as a singer and fundraiser for the civil rights movement. It's called Around the Time of Medgar. First beaten was in a hot Winona jail. Corn whiskey paid to a colored man. Beat me till he give out. Beat me like they told him. Beat my hips for being wide, my back for not being bent. They beat us all for the look in our eyes. This one is called Favorite Verse, and it starts with an epigraph. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Proverbs 26:26. Script and verse I told the jailer's wife. She bring lunch for her man. I tell her bread of life hath made one blood. Her man drew blood, do dirt behind bars. Proverbs prove it will come to light. I've been born again, she say. Lady, read your Bible. So those last two have to do with Fannie Lou Hamer being arrested with some other activists on the way back from a training and beaten very viciously while in jail, to the point where she was in the hospital for over a month. She already had a limp due to polio, childhood polio. It was more pronounced. Her eye was almost knocked out of socket. Her kidneys were hurt. It was a true brutalizing that she received in that jail in Winona, Mississippi. It didn't stop her. In fact, she told every audience she went in front of about it. So just in case there were people in the audience who thought, I just can't take what they might do to me. Fannie Lou Hamer was living proof that you can take what they might do to you, or at least she could. So we're going into this moment in time, Freedom Summer, 1964. SNCC, along with a lot of other organizations, decided that Mississippi needed to be deluged. They needed to be overwhelmed with freedom workers. There needed to be an educational arm with freedom schools, helping people learn to read. They needed to do lunch programs and free breakfast programs. They needed to help people read the Mississippi Constitution so that they could deal with these crazy tests. But they also needed a lot of year 3 law students and new lawyers to work pro bono to challenge all of these things in court. In essence, they were going to F with the folks in Mississippi on a constant basis. As Moms Mabley said, what was it? 9 ways or 6 ways? I'm going to cut you. Lightly, politely, nightly, slightly, long, deep, hard, and continuous. So that's what they did to the folks in Mississippi. And this poem is a snapshot. White or colored. Young folks argue into dawn about whether white folks can work down here alongside colored. I done washed, cooked, caught they babies, always behind or below, never beside. My body broke for 3 days over this debt. The spirit makes me ask, ain't it time they shared this cup? My part. Between Kennedy and 4 little girls lay Mississippi. Between Texas sniper and Georgia terror stretched Delta dust. Wedged inside history, mingled in Medgar's bloody carport, I stand ready to fall 5'4" further into freedom. Cock's crow won't signal denial out my mouth. I'll take up the cross. So Fannie Lou Hamer was such a boon and so valuable to the civil rights movement for a lot of reasons. Number one, she was a native of Mississippi. Number two, she spoke the language of the various constituencies that they needed to get on board with freedom work. So she could talk to snooty church ladies. She could talk to the people who toiled in the fields. She could talk to the people who belonged to the colored women's clubs. She could show up at the general store. Her father was a Baptist minister and owned a juke joint, so she could show up in the juke joint. She was also an incredible vocalist. And she had this knack for knowing gospel and spiritual songs where the lyrics could be changed to be about freedom. So instead of keep your hands on the plow, it would keep your eyes on the prize. And instead of I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus, it'd be I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. And she was singing This Little Light of Mine, but she would ask them, are you ready to vote? And it was incredible to hear her sing This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That was her favorite song, by the way, and she would end so many meetings with it. Now, I'm going to read one more Kwansaba before I ask you to write one. So I'm going to go to the very end of the book. So the very end of the book has a Kwansaba called Bound, B-O-U-N-D. And, Fannie Lou Hamer and many other activists, they were the precursors to what we in the classic hip hop era would say, my word is bond, word is bond. They had created a pledge within themselves that no matter what happened, they were going to stand for freedom for Black people. So this is Bound. My man Paps wants to save me up like change, but this thick Black body is spent. Spare breast, spare kidney, fibrous womb taken for I knowed it was gone lay down my burden. I'm riverside bound for the promise, God, I would serve him till I die. And I promised him that I would serve him until I die. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. Thank you. Now it is your turn. Let's write a Kwansaba together. So I'm going to have to stop sharing it like this, and then I'm going to go and write under. Let me move this up. I'm going to move all this up so I have enough room. I'm going to move this all the way up here so I have enough room for you all's Kwansaba ideas. All right, so the first thing we need to decide is, what will the Kwansaba be about? So we're going to open up the chat. Let's get some ideas about what the Kwansaba will be about. Give me some ideas in the chat. No idea is wrong. We're just spitballing here. What are some ideas? Family perseverance. Ooh, I like that. Family perseverance. Let's get a third idea. And love. Okay, I like all three of those words. All three of those go together. Family, perseverance, and love. Because, you know, sometimes we have to persevere to keep loving our family. So let us see what we can do with that. Okay, so our first word is going to be love. So now we need, let me see, love. Who endures? Is that 7 letters? E-N-D-U-R-E-S. Yes, endures. Love endures what? I think this is from the Bible. Somebody give me in the chat. What does love endure? Because we're going to get to that, because that's our perseverance and our love. I want to say it's love endures all things. Love endures all things. Even yes, all things. Thank you, Cherie. Love endures all things. Even what? Is it even conflict? Even, ooh. Ooh, resistance. Okay. I think resistance doesn't have, has more than 7 letters though. Is there another word for resistance? Okay, how about even push back? That way that'll give us more words. Ooh, refusal. We'll add that here. Thank you, Sarah. We're going to say refusal from those who need it most. So love endures all things, even pushback, refusal from those who need it most. Let's personify love. Love is what? Is it a hungry dog scratching at the door? Is it a moon that shining its light on us? Love is. Somebody give me something. What is love? Give us a good metaphor. It's unconditional. It's blind. Ah, who said blind? Jardel. Yes. Love is blind as justice. Ooh, come on. We're gonna do some enjambment. Justice, just as. Give it that good little hip hop flavor. Flowers in winter. Okay, so love is blind as justice, just as flowers in, instead of winter, we're gonna say in snow. Let me see. Flowers in snow kind of give us hope. We're gonna say herald. Gonna get us some what do you call that? How am I missing my poetic terms? Herald hope. What's that word when it's two consonants in a row? Alliteration. Yes. So we got blind, flowers in snow. Okay, so love endures all things, even pushback, refusal from those who need it most. Love is blind as justice, just as flowers in snow. Herald hope. That means they pronounce it. They shout out hope. They let us know hope is coming. Herald hope. Promise of triumph. Okay. Just as flowers in snow herald hope. Promise we win in the end. I'm going to say hard as loving some of us can be. All right, hard as loving. Okay, so now so far we're almost there. We are almost there, y'all. We almost got a Kwansaba. So love endures all things, even pushback, refusal from those who need it most. Love is blind as justice, just as flowers in snow herald hope. Promise we win in the end. Hard as loving some of us can be, we do. Well, 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 we do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need one more line. We do. Because Because, yep, that's 7. Just as we were loved. Oh, just as we were loved. Or something like that. I like just as we were loved. All right. So hard as loving some of us can be, How about just as we were born of love. All right, so far it says, love endures all things, even pushback, refusal from those who need it most. Love is blind as justice, just as flowers and snow herald hope. Promise we win in the end, hard as loving some of us can be, just as we were born out of love. I already said just as, so we're going to not repeat that. I'm going to say since we, because that's like can be, since we. Get a little internal rhyme there. Since we were born of love, reciprocity. All right, so almost there. Hard as loving some of us can be, since we were born of love. We're worth it, or we will endure. Ooh, I like both of that. Since we were born of love. Loving some of us can be, since we were born of love. Our love endures. How about, so we can't say love twice like that. So since we were born of it, our love endures. Yes, come on now. Come on, group poem. Y'all did this. Y'all did this thing right here. Our love endures. Yes. And then I'm going to get rid of our little blanks. And we'll have our poem all put together right at 8 o'clock when our program was supposed to be culminated. Come on, poets. Y'all, you a poet and you didn't know it, or maybe you know it. I know Marie Chu Elliott and Paisha are poets. Definitely. Okay, so this is our poem. We can put our slideshow together and show our poem. Bam. Love endures all things, even pushback, refusals from those who need it most. Love is blind as justice, just as flowers and snow herald hope. Promise we win in the end, hard as loving some of us can be, since we were born of it. Our love endures. I had to give y'all the old school poetry club snaps. Ah, Marie, you got it. You got it. Yes, Sarah, teamwork makes the dream work. All right, good people. Thus ends our Kwansaba performance and workshop. So if you would like to connect with me, please do at femininepronoun.com. We're about to have quick Q&As. If you have to leave, you can leave. But if you don't have to leave, we're going to have a little Q&A. But email me at treasure.shieldsredmond@gmail.com if you want to email me. You can follow Fannie Lou Hamer House, our artist retreat that I co-host with Dale Chambers on Instagram. And it's the IG is Fannie Lou Hamer House. Or you can go to my website to see other ways to get me to come give workshops, to talk about what I wrote my dissertation on, which is the sound of Black women's voices and recorded performance poets at femininepronoun.com. Join us this Friday at Fannie Lou Hamer House. If you go to Instagram, you will find the link to register and reserve your spot. I'm gonna be reading poems, and we're just gonna be hanging out, having a little fun this Friday. Hopefully, I'll see you there.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Treasure. That was so wonderful. And we ended on that high note there.
Look,
Great job.
that poem. Okay, I'm publishing that poem.
I love it. You should. Great. Yeah, that was wonderful. Even in an over Zoom chat, no less. So great job, everyone.
Right.
Thank you. Those poems, everything was so powerful. Thank you for sharing those with us. I really appreciate that. Anybody? We've got
Thank you.
a few of y'all
Thank
still
you,
listening to us?
Paisha. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Cherie.
Yes, yeah. So,
And the other people who contributed to the poem. Thank you, Jardale. Yes.
all right.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
do we have any questions for Treasure before we wrap up this evening? Any burning questions about the Kwansaba yet? Even though it was a really wonderful overview of the form, and you had us all right along with you. So for folks who didn't know about poetic forms, now they know.
Now they
All right.
know. Now they know they should go write some Kwansabas. Come to East
Absolutely.
St. Louis and shout them on the corners.
That I love that idea. Have a bunch of library patrons wandering around. I love
Yes.
it.
Don't get me started.
Sounds great to me. Well, thank you everyone for being with us this evening. This will be available, like I said, on YouTube. So if you want to revisit and write those Kwansabas, you'll have this resource to come back to, at least for the next couple months. So we post them for 90 days. And so thank you so much, Treasure, once again for being with us. And thank you everyone for the wonderful input and the lovely comments. If you do have a moment to fill out our virtual sign-in sheet, we really appreciate that. I'll drop a link before we sign off, just in case you came in after I posted it. But thank you again, and we look forward to whatever we come up with for next time.
All right. Love you guys. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your night. Stay dry. Started raining.
Yes, you too. Take care. Thanks again, Treasure, and thank you all.